On Monday, Donald Rumsfeld will no longer be the U.S. Secretary of Defense after failing to get Osama bin Laden or shut down al-Qaeda and failing to secure the peace in Iraq or Afghanistan. Mr. Rumsfeld is already thinking about his next project, establishing his legacy. I mean, a good legacy. Our third story in the countdown, the future ex-secretary is making the rounds of friendly interrogators and pushing views that favor him, like his dismissive take on the Watershed Iraq Study Group report that outlines his failures.
Have you had an opportunity to read the ISG report?
No.
Will you read it?
I've skimmed it.
He's even willing to contradict his still commander-in-chief to claim that he lost his job due to politics.
I think that this time the outcome of the election, just to put it right up on the table, created a situation where I personally believe, and the president agrees, it is better for someone else to be leading this department with that new Congress.
Which is not, by the way, what President Bush said in announcing Mr. Rumsfeld's departure the day after the elections.
He and I both agreed in our meeting yesterday that it was appropriate that I accept his resignation. And so the decision was made. Actually, I thought we were going to do fine yesterday. Shows what I know. But I thought we were going to be fine in the election. My point to you is that win or lose, Bob Gates was going to become the nominee.
Joining us now, a Pentagon veteran from the Reagan administration, former Assistant Secretary of Defense Lawrence Korb, who is now a fellow at the Center for American Progress. As always, sir, thanks for your time tonight.
Nice to be with you.
Got a couple of more intriguing post-Rumsfeldian era Rumsfeld remarks for you, but I'd like you to weigh in first on the two we just played. Firstly, the idea of skimming the Iraq Study Group report. Your reaction when you heard that?
Well, I mean, he knows how much it criticized him by saying, well, I'm very busy and it's not that important, so I'm just going to dismiss it. I mean, that's his way of not confronting all of the criticisms they made about how he ran the war, how he ignored the advice from the military, how he botched the post-Saddam phase of the war.
And the other headline claiming that he was dismissed because of the election, even though he knew it was coming before the election. Somewhere in there, necessarily either he or the president will be polite about this, forthcoming on this subject.
Well, again, Bob Gates was interviewed the weekend before the election. Given Rumsfeld's relationship with Vice President Cheney, I'm sure that he knew about it. The president actually was thinking about getting rid of him about a year ago, and then you had the so-called revolt of the generals calling for his resignation. So I think the president backed off because he didn't want to look like he was caving into pressure. And remember him by Rumsfeld saying, oh, it's just politics. He basically then is not acknowledging that it was really his performance that led to him being pushed out before he wanted to, because he really wanted to break Secretary McNamara's record.
Which he would have done in about a week and a half. And
if he had stayed till the end of this calendar year.
A certain finality to the fact that he's not reaching that, a certain element of his legacy may be contained in that bit of trivia. But the other elements that he brought up in this interview, admitting that he used this term himself, he said that he would have chosen a label now, in retrospect, other than war on terror. Is the idea here to propagate a notion that fighting al-Qaeda had to be done as some ongoing eternal struggle which might someday be won, rather than simply wrapping up the group of 40 to 50,000 who attacked us, which he and the administration did not choose to do?
Well, very definitely. I mean, you can't win a war on terror. I mean, terror, is a tactic, and you're not going to defeat all of the terrorists in the world. And I think he is basically saying, well, that's the president, that's those people trying to scare Americans. I always had a balanced view of the situation. I didn't want to bring democracy to the Middle East. I just wanted to go after the people who attacked us on September 11th. And so to the extent that we broadened this far beyond where we need to, that's somebody else's fault. I was just following orders.
But just last month, as we learned when it was leaked to the New York Times, and no one has said this was a fabricated document, Mr. Rumsfeld wrote this menu of possible options in Iraq, along with some recommendations to peruse or pursue. But when he was asked this week whether he had any advice for Bob Gates, his reply was no. You worked with Mr. Rumsfeld briefly. Does he want Gates to succeed where he himself has failed?
No, he's always been interested basically in himself, not taking responsibility for things that happen and trying to push the blame off on other people. And that memo was a classic Rumsfeld thing, saying, well, see, I knew it wasn't going well. I try to tell you people here, you know, you can look it up, and we need to change the present course. And by saying he hasn't even looked at the Baker-Hamilton report, again, that's something that he could help Bob Gates out if he really wanted to.
Well, he did leave advice for his successor. Unfortunately, he left every possible piece of advice, and much of it is self-contradictory. In any event, former Assistant Secretary of Defense Lawrence Korb, as always, sir, thanks for your time.
Nice to be with you again.